Sheriff Dar Leaf, don't sue Esquires, arrest them for treason. On June 8th, 2022, this is Staff Sergeant Robert Allen Redlewski, U.S. Army veteran, also known as Rob Ryder. Email address is courtofrecord@aol.com, and my phone number is 616-712-6179. And if you don't know who Sheriff Dar Leaf is, well, he's the sheriff in Michigan who has brought a suing the Attorney General, I believe it is, and the Secretary of State in the Court of Claims of the state of Michigan. Well, unfortunately, Sheriff, you've hired an Esquire to complain about Esquires in front of an Esquire. I don't believe your chances are very good, because those Esquires made sure that there's errors in your official records, so you're technically really not the constitutional sheriff. And it's not that you couldn't be, it's just you haven't satisfied every jot and tittle of the law. And until you do, well, you're not the sheriff. All right, so first, remove the plank from your own eye, because there can be no new heaven and no new earth until every jot and tittle of law is satisfied. And that's you, Sheriff. You're the Romans chapter 13 minister of God, if you had your frickin' paperwork together. But Esquires, and it's just not you. I mean, this is what they do. This is what Esquires do for a living, is they ensure that there's errors and omissions of, adjudicative facts that need to be there in official records, so that, technically there's no official record, right? It's there's errors and omissions in the records. And unless we fix them, well, the record shows these errors and omissions, and the record is what the record is. That's how common law works. All right, so we need to fix that, Sheriff, and that starts with you taking a proper oath of office. So that's part of what we're going to talk about. So give me just a second, Sheriff, and I'll get on with it. But, I don't live that far from you. I'm up in Kent County in Oakfield Township. So maybe you and the Kent County Sheriff and any other patriotic sheriffs that wanted to get involved could come up to Kent County, and we could, overrun the township hall, take it over from that Esquire, and, give a little informational meeting to everybody at the same time, and we can all start with a basic kernel of truth to work off of. Okay, let me get started. Hang on just a second. I needed to point out that, the sheriff is suing the Esquires, and the Esquires are investigating his election. Well, what they're going to find out, Sheriff, is you didn't take the proper oath of office. And it's just the way it is. So anyways, if you were to go to Rob Ryder with 3 B's, ROBBBRYDER on YouTube, I have many, many videos on similar subjects to do with the things that are wrong. And, as you can see, I mention Esquires a lot because, well, they're the things that are wrong. An Esquire, by definition, is an agent of the crown. Right? It's a member of the British class system. Well, way below them Esquires in that British class system is a dude called the Mister. And if you ever deal with Esquires, they make sure that you're a Mister. They want you to be Mr. Redlewski. And this is why I'm never Mr. Redlewski. I am always Staff Sergeant Robert Allen Redlewski. We need to use titles. You can call me Staff Sergeant. But I'm not a Mr. in a system run by Esquires, who represent the United States of America, which is not the same as United States or the United States of America with the T capitalized. Right? The United States of America, T capitalized, comes out of the Articles of Confederation. The style of the Confederation shall be the United States of America. United States of America, with no T capitalized, is a dominion of King George III and his successors, as proved by the Treaty of Paris or Treaty of Peace of 1783, put in the statutes at large at 1 Stat 80, which says in there that as the king is claiming his stuff in this treaty, one of the things he claims is United States of America. While other places in the treaty, it talks about United States. So in the same sentence, you got United States and United States of America. Apparently, they're not the same thing. Well, the easiest thing to remember is the United States of America is the democracy, which is in the United States, But it's not the United States. It's not the Republican form of government that was guaranteed the several states by the United States in Article 4 of the Constitution. That would be you. Right? You're the Republican form of government. The problem is you don't have proper oath of office. It's just a little detail, just jots and tittles. And I hope you understand how important that is. Sure, right? It's all about the jots and tittles. I have an advantage. I worked in a nuclear power plant for 5 years, and I was responsible for the instrumentation and control system, which is the brain of the frickin' whole power plant. So I was dealing with all the different subsystems that make it up. And I can tell you that a nuclear power plant, they really care about the jots and tittles. And if we did the same, well, we wouldn't have the problem we have now. Okay, hang on just a second. So here in a minute, we're going to look at the sheriff's complaint, which is in the state of Michigan, which is not Michigan, right? State of Michigan is not the same as Michigan. The Constitution says Constitution of Michigan of 1963, not the Constitution of State of Michigan of 1963, right? So this is a foreign jurisdiction in Michigan. This is the jurisdiction of Esquires. And so the Esquire that the quasi-sheriff hired is taking to complain about other Esquires, who the Attorney General is, and so is the Secretary of State. They're all, and then they're going to go to a court that has an Esquire sitting there making the decision. Now, all these Esquires are members of a, in fact, I have that on here. Hang on a second. All these Esquires are members of the state bar. So if you were to go MCL 600-901, MCL 600-904, we're talking about state bar, you'd see that down there in the constitutionality part at the bottom, it talks about which serve a compelling state interest and which cannot be accomplished by means less intrusive upon the First Amendment rights of objecting attorneys. This regulation of the practice of law, the maintenance of the high standards of legal profession, discharge of professional duties to protect and inform the public as purposes in which the state of Michigan has a compelling interest justify unavoidable intrusions of First Amendment rights of attorneys. So Esquires are compelled to be members of a union, a closed society, that advocates the overthrow of our constitutional form of government because it makes attorneys give it up. Because if you give up any one part of the Constitution, you give up the whole thing. Right? So these people have given up their constitutional protections, and they're the ones making the decisions in the legal system here in the United States. They call it the American legal system. They don't talk about the laws of the United States. No, it's the American legal system, not the constitutional judicial branch of government. No, it's the American legal system. It's like for Indians, right? This is a Native American jurisdiction. But it's not citizen of the United States, Constitution of the United States jurisdiction. And they, voluntarily did it, and so they've all joined this society, so there's really no reason that you can't go arrest all Esquires for treason because they joined a society that advocates the overthrow of a constitutional form of government. It made them give up their constitutional rights. Okay, so Sheriff, before we can look at the complaint that's been filed on your behalf or for you by an attorney who's assumed your identity, basically, and the laws that she's talking about in her complaint, I need to cover just a few basics so that we all understand what the heck's going on. So bear with me just a second. Let's just run through a few 1, 2, 3. So if we go to the 6th article of the Constitution, I really don't care if you believe it's 1871, pre-1871, who knows what other. Apparently people think there's 3 different styles of constitutions floating out there. But in none of them did they change the articles. They just changed the amendments. And I'm talking about the articles because there are no amendments until we get through the articles. This is first. And this is the 6th article, which has 2 really important parts. Well, it's all important, but for our purposes, that The senators, representatives before mentioned, and members of several state legislatures, and all, A-L-L, all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. But no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office of public trust under the United States. And the section just before that, well, first of all, that includes you, Sheriff, because you'd be one of them executive and judicial officers. Right? You have both executive and judicial powers. The section before that, though, says this Constitution, which Constitution? Will this be the Constitution of the United States? Not the Constitution of the United States of America. No. Constitution of the United States. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof. So after the ratification of the Constitution, we're going to start passing laws in the United States. That's what we're talking about. And we're going to look at the first one they did and, start there in just a second. But or which shall be made, right? The laws of the United States shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. Right? So if it's a law of the United States, it is supreme law of the land. I don't really care what the state says, or the county says, or the township says. I only care what the Constitution and the laws of the United States say. The laws of the United States are the common law of the United States. Okay, so now let's go look at one. All right, so now this is the first law, Sheriff, passed after the ratification of that Constitution, where it was called an act to regulate the time and manner of administering certain oaths on June 1st, 1789, that says that the oath or affirmation required by the 6th article of the Constitution of the United States, that's what we just read, shall be administered in the following form. Shall. Sheriff, that means just the way you see it here, or you didn't do it right. I state your name, do solemnly swear or affirm, as case may be, that I will support the Constitution of the United States. Just like that on the paper. All right, that's what they said. Within them double quotes there. That's the oath that satisfies the 6th article of the Constitution. It doesn't satisfy the Michigan Constitution. That's irrelevant, because this is supreme law of the land. This is the one you have to take first before you worry about taking any other one. And this is the one that you haven't taken. And not only is it in the very first law passed after the ratification of the Constitution, which if we read into here, it talks about state officers, which you are, Sheriff, and that you have to have a certificate or a record to prove that you've taken it. But that's even more clearly written in United States Code in Section 4, USC 101 and 102, which says, right, now this is United States Code, Title 4, seat of government and the states. All right, the oath or affirmation, oath by members of legislature and officers, every member of the state legislature, and every executive and judicial officer of the state shall, before he proceeds to execute duties of his office, take the oath in the following form. And by gosh, it's the same thing. Now, they took the thing out of the parentheses there, so okay, I'm good with it. Do this one. With the stuff in the parentheses, right? Or without. I'm okay with it. You got to use those words. And this AB, right, this is your full legal name. We're not using no middle initials. This is like the name on a real ID compliant ID. Robert Allen Ratluski. Do solemnly swear I will support the Constitution of the United States. Now, I'm an enlisted veteran, right? I didn't take this oath. They have us take a different oath because we're not executive or judicial officers, and neither are military officers, right, of the branch. They're military officers. And I'm enlisted. We have our own, which is to protect and defend the Constitution. And that's why I'm here. And I need you to support it. And here's that second part, right? Such oath made. So this is what you got to do now, right? This is the answer to the problem, to the jot and tittle. Such oath may be administered by any person who, by the law of the state, is authorized to administer the oath of office, and the person so administering such oath shall cause a record or certificate thereof to be made in the same manner as the law of the state he is directed to record or certify the oath of office. Right? Where's the record or certificate that proves, Sheriff, that you took the oath that's in Section 101? Or for that matter, where is it for the governor? Because she doesn't have it. I've looked for it. Neither does the Attorney General. Neither does the Secretary of State. Neither does anybody who's playing judge. whether it be the court of claims that you went to, or the uh, circuit court, or the district court, or the Supreme Court, or the Court of Appeals. None of them fucktard Esquires have taken this oath, and so they are not officers of the state, right? And so, because they were supposed to take the oath, and they didn't, they avoided taking it, and so did you. Well, right now, you're an enemy of the United States. Because, the United States said you had to take it, and you didn't do it. Well, that makes you an enemy of the United States. And if you support an enemy of the United States and what they're doing, that's an act of treason. So anytime you, sheriff, or any of your men go stand there in a fucking courtroom with these black robe priests who haven't taken an oath of office and watch them haul another citizen of the United States away, you are aiding an enemy of the United States. So you got to shut down all the courts until this shit's figured out. Your men cannot go to the court anymore and play bailiff. It's unconstitutional. The people that are running the system didn't take the oath. Okay, so let's go on here. Let's look at Whitmer's oath, because you would have taken one similar to this. Now, you may have filled out a piece of paper, look something like this, sure. But if we were to look at this oath, this is the one from the state of Michigan. Excuse me. It doesn't have her full legal name, right? So this really isn't Gretchen Esther Whitmer. This is somebody hiding their identity, Gretchen Esther Whitmer, behind the alias Gretchen Whitmer. And this Constitution of the state, the C and the S have been capitalized, where in the Constitution it's not that way. And that, by doing that, that changed the grammar of the sentence. But the biggest error or omission in her oath is that she did it before a notary. Right? And in MCL 1537, and on the Secretary of State's website, it clearly says that a notary cannot administer an oath to the governor. So Gretchen Whitmer is not the governor. This is what she put in. Now, I got this from the Department of Elections for Michigan, right? And I asked for all the oaths for the governor, and this is the only one they gave me, which means she didn't do one to satisfy 1 Stat 23, because they don't have a record of it, or 4 USC 101. Right? So this is the same person then that filled out this, there's Gretchen Whitmer, now acting as the governor, that filled out the declaration of a state of emergency in Michigan, which started the whole COVID thing back in 2020. Right? And she did it under this seal right here. And there's that Secretary of State that you're going after. Well, the Secretary of State here is doing it by the governor. She's doing it as the governor. Gretchen Whitmer did it as uppercase governor, but Benson's doing it as propercase governor. And then she apparently claims to have done it under the Great Seal of the state of Michigan, which, as you can see, is all in uppercase and starts with the word the. But if we go look at the act that created the seal, all right, here we go. Here's the description. It says the Great Seal shall be comprise the coat of arms of the state, around which shall appear the words Great Seal of the state of Michigan, lowercase except for Michigan, and no the at the beginning. So this seal, sheriff, right, sheriff-elect, is a counterfeit. These people are doing shit under counterfeits oaths of the Great Seal of the state of Michigan. And you have a duty to do something about it. Because let's go look at the common law duties of a sheriff. Let's look at Bouvier's. What did Bouvier say? Sheriff, name of the chief officer of the county. Because in England he represents or comes the coms or the earl. So, I think instead of an earl, we have, we should have a board of supervisors. That's what the Constitution says. But instead we have a board of commissioners. Right? Originally, it was all the township supervisors got together, and they made up the governing board of the county, and that was replaced in 1968-ish by this thing they call the county commissioners, which, it's a fallacy, but nevertheless. His name is said to be derived from the Saxon Shire, County. Yeah, you know that stuff. That stuff you know. The general duties of the sheriff are to keep the peace within the county. He may apprehend and commit to prison all persons who break the peace or attempt to break it, and bind anyone in recognizance to keep the peace. He is required ex officio, right? So this is your ex officio duty, having nothing to do with being the county sheriff. This is ex officio, to pursue and take all traitors, murderers, felons, and rioters. He has the keeping of the county goal, that would be the jail, and he is bound to defend against all attacks. He may command the posse comitatus. Okay, so that's all the common law stuff. And, well, the ones breaking the peace in your county, sheriff, is the black robed priest sitting there acting like he's the court of the state of Michigan or of Michigan. Because none of those black robed priests have taken the oath to satisfy the 6th article of the Constitution. They have a invalid state oath, and they're just impersonating officers of the United States or several states on behalf of the United States of America, which is King George's jurisdiction. So technically, we've been invaded by England. It's really that simple. One last thing we need to cover, Sheriff, then we can get into your complaint. I'll just pick that thing apart for a bit and we'll be done. But if you were to look around your office somewhere, there's a gold fringe flag of the United States in your office. And if you were to read Chapter 2 of AR 840-10, Army Regulation 840-10, specifically in Section 2.3, you would find out that the national flags listed below are for indoor display. That's what I'm talking about. And for use in ceremonies and parades. For these purposes, the flag of the United States will be rayon banner cloth or heavyweight nylon, trimmed on 3 sides with gold yellow fringe, 2 1/2 inches wide. You might want to take a minute and measure yours. Make sure you got the right flag there. And then it comes in these various sizes. And then we go down to C and it says, well, okay, well, now we can authorization for display. Where can you display a gold fringe flag? The flag of the United States is authorized for indoor display for each. And then if you were to read these, each one, you would soon see, well, these are all tied to the military. And there's one that says specifically military courtroom. Now, nowhere in here does it say a civilian courtroom, constitutional courtroom, court of claims, district court, circuit court, superior court. Doesn't say it. No, it says military court. And yet, Sheriff, you know as well as I do, when you walk in a courtroom, there's a gold fringe flag. It's a military courtroom. Right? So who are those people sitting there in a military courtroom pretending to be judges? There's something wrong, Sheriff, because they're not constitutional judges. They didn't take proper oath of office. Now, they could have been appointed by the military, because this is the point of all this, is we've been under military rule since 1863, when President Lincoln, what's the proper word? Suppressed? Is that what we say? Suppressed the writ of mandamus, or writ of habeas corpus? You know, and by doing that, he, basically suppressed the whole Constitution, put us under martial law. That same year, he passed this thing, or not passed, but he created General Order 100 that went to the Army, that has to do with the government of the Army in the field. And it says in the 2nd article that if martial law is declared, then until there's a peace treaty or a special proclamation, it continues. And it goes on today. And so you, Sheriff, are representing the United States military in the county because you have a gold fringe flag. Right? You're an agency of the military government. Now, you're not the only one. I mean, the Township Hall has one. They got a courtroom, like I said. The church has got them. Heck, the frickin' American Legion has them. But none of them people are using them. They're not using the authority of the flag because they have errors or omissions in their records. It's a common problem. This is all done by Esquires. It's not a mistake. It's a frickin' scheme. Okay, so hey, I would suggest everybody who's watching this video would just pause it here for a minute, go, take a potty break, get yourself something to drink, whatever, because I'm going to have to ramble on for a bit, and this video may go on for a while, but it's all, good, important stuff. If you're trying to make a difference. That's me. I'm all about making a difference. I'm all about taking the truth to the Pharisee. So telling truth to power. So, if you just click off now, when you come back on and I'm just start talking, you won't realize I just started talking. Also, I'm not taking a break. I'm going to get going on this. Give me just a second. Okay, so let's just, look at the form. Forget what they've said for a minute. We'll just kind of look at the form. And so as we see, Dar Leaf, uppercase, in his official capacity as Berry County Sheriff, Berry County, Michigan, plaintiff, right? That's a weird way to, why is your name in uppercase? Why is it Berry County Sheriff, Berry County, Michigan, instead of just Berry County Sheriff? Or Sheriff, Berry County, Michigan. Right? It's like they made a distinction there, which I'm not saying I understand all these things. I just like to point them out. And then here, right, they have like the Attorney General first, and then they have her name, where here they had your name and then your office. Is there a reason for that? So should you be the Sheriff of Berry County, Michigan? Is that really your proper title? I don't know, but, Stephanie Lambert's the one that wrote this. Right? So what I don't understand is you went to a private attorney to do this. Why didn't you go to the county prosecutor who works for the county? Or if they're a county officer and say, dude, you need to file this because these people did this wrong. And if he doesn't do it, well, then have him arrested. Although if we were doing that, we wouldn't be taking it to this court. I'm just saying that that's his job. And instead, they're using a private attorney. So what happened here? So now come the plaintiff, right? Berry County Sheriff Dar Leaf and Berry County Sheriff's Office, collectively, not singularly, so not you by yourself, right? But collectively referred to as the sheriff. Berry County Sheriff Office, right, is separate from Berry County Sheriff Dar Leaf. Right? But anyways, when they're combined, it's a constitutional office under Article 7 subsection 4 of the Michigan Constitution, by and through his attorneys. And for this complaint, for declaratory mandamus injunctive of a relief, states as follows. Right? So you went through your attorneys. You gave somebody else power of attorney to be you. Right? So this attorney just assumed the identity of the sheriff. Okay, so the Constitution goes on to say then that there shall be, every 4 years, in each organized county, a sheriff, whose duties and powers shall be provided by law. That's throughout the Constitution. In 1880, the Constitutional Office of Sheriff, Michigan Supreme Court, stated, it cannot be maintained. The legislation would be valid with retain the names, but destroy the powers of each officer. Right? So if you're going to call it a sheriff, you got to go to the common law definition of what a sheriff is, and that's his common law powers. All right, where there is an undoubted power to vary the duties of such officers, it cannot be lawful to change those duties as to a practicality to change the office. And the offices are named in the Constitution. They are named as having unknown legal character. All right, the Office of Constitution, Dar Leaf is separate from the Berry County Sheriff's Office. All right, the office is constitutional. And Dar Leaf is separate from the Berry County Sheriff's Office. So, what they're doing is they're saying that, like an oath of office, right, to be the sheriff, compared to there's a building there and that's your office. And they're trying to make this office, this building, have some kind of, legal character. Because that's what they set up here, right, that Berry County Sheriff Dar Leaf and Berry County Sheriff Office, collectively referred to as the sheriff. They separated them somehow, Sheriff. And how they did that is they got you not to take your proper oath of office. So the Office of County Sheriff is constitutionally created. And in Michigan, the Office of Sheriff is known as a known legal character. And no other government entity, state or federal, may vary the duties and powers of the sheriff in such a way which obstructs, changes, interferes, impedes, or altogether usurps the legal character of the office. Throughout Michigan's history, the county sheriff has been a constitutional officer, which brings with it certain powers, duties, and responsibilities. The office of sheriff was created by the Constitution and is considered the chief law enforcement officer of the county. Now let me show you something. So your Esquire, Sheriff Leaf, just said that the office of sheriff was created by Constitution and is considered the chief law enforcement officer of the county. And yet, if you go to, like, this is Livingston County in Michigan, so I'm not saying it says this on every prosecutor's website, but I've seen it on other ones besides this one. It says the prosecuting attorney is the chief law enforcement officer of Livingston County. Well, we're told by an Esquire that it's the sheriff. So are they saying that the prosecutor's the sheriff? Right? So is David J. Reeder the sheriff of Livingston County? Because he's saying he's the chief law enforcement officer. It's like he usurped your authority. Ain't that something? All right, hang on. Okay, continuing on. Noting the sheriff wields the executive power for the preservation of the public peace. Well, Sheriff, by the time we're done, I'm going to have proved to you that Esquires are disturbing the peace throughout the county, throughout the state, throughout the nation. They just arrest them all, and the problem goes away. We'll get to that, noting that the preservation of peace has always been regarded, both in England and in America, as one of the most important prerogatives of the state. Well, that's what made you a state officer, because it's a prerogative of the state. You're not keeping the peace for the, right? It's not the peace of the city or the county, but the peace of the king or the state that is violated by crimes and disorders. Municipal officers have no power as conservators or injustices of the peace. This power is reposed singularly in the office of sheriff, and if it is assumed by any other local officers, it will be a usurpation. Well, let's go back and look at an example of usurpation. The prosecuting attorney is the chief law enforcement officer of Livingston County. Well, this man is disturbing the peace by that frickin' statement right there, and he should be arrested immediately. How about it, Sheriff? You know the sheriff in Livingston County? Go ahead, this fucktard arrested. Let's get started. We don't need anybody's permission, except you take the proper oath of office and get it recorded, and you'd be styling and profiling. Okay, Sheriff Leaf, let me show you something that no Esquire is going to ever tell you or show you, right? This is, state Constitution of Michigan. See, it doesn't say it's Constitution of the State of Michigan. It's the Constitution of Michigan. Michigan is the state, not State of Michigan. State of Michigan is a corporation of some kind, probably incorporated in England, has nothing to do with Michigan, the constitutional state. But in this here Constitution of this chapter, this is where we see where the sheriff is, right? So the sheriff, the county clerk, the county treasurer, the register of deeds shall hold their principal office at the county seat. Now we need to think about that for a second, because what's the county seat? Well, the county seat is the city. But what's the city? Right? The city was created by a charter. It's got a city hall. That's where the sheriff needs to have an office, in City Hall, because that's the county seat. The sheriff, the county clerk, the county treasurer, so forth. But they all moved you out in these other buildings, right? You got your sheriff's office someplace, and county clerk's over here in a county building or whatever, but it's not the county seat. The county seat is the fucking city. And the thing that is the city is the City Hall. That's why you don't fight City Hall. But here's the big one here. Subsection 7, Board of Supervisors. A Board of Supervisors shall be established in each organized county, consisting of one member from each organized township and such representation from cities as provided by law. This is what is supposed to run the county, but instead we have this thing called the Board of County Supervisors. Yet the Constitution doesn't say that. It says Board of Supervisors, not county commissioners. But then when you read the fine print, constitutionality, section held invalid under federal constitution. And this has to do with the fact that we don't have Board of Supervisors anymore. Now we have this Board of or county commissioners. Okay, well, again, if this little divot right here, this little jot and tittle, made this section invalid or unconstitutional according to the federal Constitution, then the whole Michigan Constitution is unconstitutional to the federal Constitution until this is fixed. But it ain't been fixed, so this whole thing is invalid. So you taking an oath that's in this piece, in this document, doesn't mean a fucking thing. It's not valid because it's unconstitutional. Because the damn thing says that the Board of Supervisors is going to run the county. And yet we have this thing called the, Board of County Commissioners. Right? Have your Esquire explain that to you. Well, let's continue on now that we've proven that at least in some counties, the county the guy pretended to be the prosecutor because he didn't take the proper oath of office either, right, is usurping the authority of the sheriff because he says he is the chief law enforcement officer of the county. All right, holding consistent with common law duties, it is the duty of the sheriffs in the respective counties by themselves or deputies to ferret out crime, to apprehend and arrest criminals, and insofar as within their power to secure evidence of crimes in their counties and to present a report of evidence so secured to the district attorney or assistant district attorney for the county. Now, it didn't say the prosecuting attorney, right? Unless he's an attorney for the district, right? If the county is now being called a district, like a defined territorial land within the United States, well, that's a little bit different. But it's your duty, Sheriff. It's a lot of work for you to do. And so I'm going to suggest right now that, while you have your issues to deal with, the American Legion and the VFW and all these other patriotic associations that have federal charters have the same problem because their jots and tittles have errors in them. But if they were corrected, then all this things to do with oaths and who's doing shit right could all be watched over by veterans. And we would have the authority to bring it to your attention when we found criminal activity in elections. And then you wouldn't have to go represented by an Esquire to complain about Esquires to another Esquire. You could just arrest him because you'd be in your proper office and so would we. Right? The sheriff represents the sovereignty of the state. Well, like the state of Michigan, right? It's not a sovereign. It gave up its sovereignty to join the Union. The United States is sovereign. And actually, it's the Constitution that's sovereign. The United States is just the Union. It's the thing that's going to hold it all together. But, the thing that's the sovereign is the Constitution. Right? He has no superiors in the county. And in the execution of his law enforcement duties, the sheriff represents the state. And no other entity may exercise direct control over how the sheriff fulfills the law enforcement duty. So you could go round up all the bar members in your county and put them in a holding cell and feed them bologna sandwiches for a couple days. They'll be spilling their guts to everything that's going on. Right? That's one way for you to fill your enforcement duties. By this mandate, sheriffs are given complete authority to enforce the state criminal laws in their counties. Well, I want to show you one of those real quick. Hang on a second. Sheriff, this is the Michigan Penal Code, right? Act 328 of 1931. And what happened? I thought I had my page in there. Hang on. Well, there it is. If we go down to section MCL 750-217C, legal process, impersonation, false representation, or action as public officer or employee, it says very clearly that a person shall not impersonate, falsely represent himself or herself as, or falsely act as a public officer or public employee and prepare, issue, execute, serve, otherwise act to further the operation of any legal process or an authorized process that affects or purports to affect the persons or property. That's you, Sheriff. You're doing all those things right now because your oath of office isn't proper. And so is Whitmer as the governor. And so is the Attorney General and the Secretary of State and these other usurpers. They're all violating this section of this law, and according to this, well, right, by this mandate, sheriffs are given complete authority to enforce the state criminal laws in their counties. This is why you must remove the plank from your own eye first. And MCL 5170 purports in important part that each sheriff may appoint one or more deputy sheriffs at the sheriff's pleasure. Okay, deputy sheriffs, not sheriff deputies, deputy sheriffs. Right, so that would be your stand-in for you, given the same powers. Well, that's what you should be given to veterans. In the exercise of executive administrative functions in conserving the public peace and vindicating the law, preserving the rights of the government, he, that would be the sheriff, represents the sovereignty of the state. He has no superior in this county. Sheriffs, coroners, and clerks and other so-called county officers are properly state officers for the county. Well, you are a state officer, and we read in 4 USC 101 that all state officers had to take a particular oath. Don't argue with it. Now, sheriff, if you're I'm sure you got to know the history on the sheriff. It's, an ancient office, goes back to at least the 12th century. But so does the coroner. And actually, the way the law is written is there could be a vacancy in the sheriff, but there's never a vacancy in the coroner. Now, that's under the laws of England. So who's the coroner today? Is that who the prosecutor's playing? All right, because the coroner is the keeper of the king's pleas. So, I'm going to let you figure it out. If you're the sheriff, who's the coroner? But sheriffs, coroners, clerks, and other so-called county officers, are properly state officers for the county. Right? You're the state local. Being an inherent attribute of sovereignty, the police power of the state is attributed to the sheriff's powers and duties. Jeepers, sheriff, please get your oath of office straightened out today. Right? The sheriff's office is therefore different from other county institutions in that it is a constitutional office. Well, that'd be when the paperwork's correct. Thus, the sheriff's law enforcement duties are the exclusive purview of the sheriff as an elected constitutional officer. So, since the Michigan Constitution is invalid, it doesn't change the fact that the same thing is of what's said in the Constitution of the United States, where all state executive and judicial officers shall execute an oath to support the Constitution of the United States, or this Constitution, right? So you need to go take that oath, sure. And who can give it to you? Why don't you go down and talk to the military, have them do it. Because I don't trust anybody who just calls themselves a state officer, right? Because they all have the same defects as you do. But military officers can execute oaths of office, and probably so can a preacher, because he's got a gold fringed flag, right? Just got to be done by the proper person, and you have a copy to say, I did it. Right? Go file it into the county records, the official records. And I'm sure that you're supposed to have an oath, or along with an oath, a particular bond. Make sure your bond is right, because by and large, many people have bonds. You have general liability insurance policies, but you don't have an official bond. And the bonds I've seen that are written for, apparently for county officers, right, they have errors in them, because they were written by Esquires that put errors in everything. There's errors in deeds for houses. There's errors in mortgages. There's errors in taxes. There's errors in everything. Like if you were to go look at your deed for your house, you'll find out that first of all, you don't own it because it doesn't have your full legal name on it. But in there to give a legal description. All right, so apparently that's what you bought. But then you look at what you're paying taxes on, and it doesn't have the same names as the owners or the grantee on the warranty deed, and it has a different legal description. So why are you paying taxes for something you didn't buy? You have a deed that says, well, that's what I bought, and you're paying taxes for something else. because that's how esquires do their business. Right? They're disturbing the peace. In 1976, something happened, and the preservation of peace, the arrest and detention of persons charged with the commission of public offenses, such as impersonating an officer of the state, the service of papers and actions are connected in the administration of justice. In Michigan, consistent with common law duties, sheriff also have a duty to enforce the law and to investigate and ferret out potential criminal activity. Well, I've given you plenty, sheriff, so you have no reason not to do it. Right? Either you will do it to prove that you are a patriot, or you'll just prove yourself to be paid opposition by not doing it. That's if somebody can get this to the sheriff and we get him to listen to it. And, sheriff, like I said, I'm only right up the road, dude. I'm an expert at this. I just don't have any authority. I need your authority. I spent 8 years in the Army. You know what I learned, sheriff? Is that as an NCO, the most important thing to me was a signature of an officer. That's really all I needed them for, because I need a signed order to get shit done. Right? And I can't sign the order. I got to have an officer do it. You get an officer to sign a document, you'd be surprised what can happen. Anyways, as the chief law enforcement officer of the county, and on behalf of the citizenry, right, citizens of the United States, to investigate and ferret out potential criminal activity, including violations of state and federal election laws. Oh, there may be some of that shit. Right, so there's all sorts of things that go with that, like there's no certificates of election, there's no valid state oath, there's no valid Constitution of the United States oath. When they register persons at the township or the city, they're not following the Michigan election code, as I'm going to show you shortly. Right, because you're supposed to go there and fill out an affidavit and have an oath given to you by the county clerk or by the township clerk. Well, they don't do that. Right, you don't go and take an oath before the county or the township clerk to register to be an elector in the township, although that's what the law says to do. Right, so they're not registering anybody as an elector. They're registering them as voters. Well, you don't have the same authority as a voter that you have as an elector. Right, so indeed, in MCL 168-41, that is the Michigan Election Code, by the way, it is hereby made the duty of any police, sheriff, or other peace officer present and having knowledge of any violation of this provision of this act, which would be the Michigan Election Code, to forthwith institute criminal proceedings for the punishment of such offender. I've done many videos on this in the past, sheriff. Right, where I pointed this stuff out, I was like, dude, this is what it says. I just can't get anybody to do anything about it. Right, but it says right here that if if there's any violations of this act, then, they got to institute criminal proceedings. Well, nobody has taken the proper oath of office. That'd be a violation of this act. Myself, the citizenry, have not been properly registered in the township. That'd be a violation of this act. Right? So here we go. Now in MCL 168-520, same law, illegal or fraudulent voter registration activity. Well, that's exactly what happened. The sheriff is required to investigate any alleged or suspected illegal or fraudulent registration activity. I can show you all sorts of examples. Right? And this, this is the verbiage for it. I'm not going to read it. We'd be here forever if I read all these laws. But then in another section, so if you didn't get it enough, they told you here in 168-41, and we'll tell you again on 168-941, it is hereby made the duty of any police, sheriff, or other peace officer present and having knowledge of any violation of any of the provisions of this act to forthwith institute criminal proceedings for the punishment of such offender. They're talking about you doing your duty, which you can't do until you take the oath of office to satisfy the 6th article of the Constitution, because the Michigan Constitution has been rendered invalid, unconstitutional, because it still says that we have supervisors that run the county when there's county commissioners running the county. Somebody's a liar. So this lawsuit represents a flagrant violation of these aforementioned constitutional and statutory laws on the part of the defendants, acting in concert and jointly who have taken it upon themselves to obstruct justice and interfere with, ultimately usurp the powers and duties of the county sheriff. That they have done those things. They certainly have, but they've done them through the election process, right? By making sure that these errors and omissions exist in the election laws. So I just want to show you a few of these particular parts of the election law, Sheriff, and we'll be done for today. Oh, but I do want to show you one last thing, right? The Berry County Sheriff's Office is located at 1212 West State Street, Hastings, Michigan. Well, I bet you that's not the address of City Hall for Hastings, Michigan, which is the county seat for Berry County, right? So what's the frickin' address of City Hall? That's where you have to have an office. Right? Somebody needs to, if that isn't what it is, somebody needs to explain, well, what do they mean by an office in the county seat? Where is it written what that is? Because they're making it a point to point out here that your office is at this address, and this address is not the county seat address. And the Constitution says you have to have your office at the county seat. You can see how simply the jots and tittles can make a difference in either staying in this godforsaken demonic world or having a new heaven and a new earth. Now, in a minute, we'll go back and look at what a certificate of election is and who's supposed to have one and all these other things about the people running for office. But of everything in this freaking law, the most important section is Section 23, which is registration of electors, not registration of voters. In fact, I have to laugh when I went down, after having studied this and I first got involved, and telling the township supervisor or the township clerk's office, hey, I want to register as an elector. They said, oh, as a voter. I said, no, as an elector. Oh, we register voters. But the law says electors. Well, yeah, but we register voters. Right? That's what they told me. It's like, well, then you're not registering electors, which is different than registering a voter. So let's see what it says, right? Qualifications for registration of an elector. Well, we could say that, I just read a few of the sections. I'll slow down. The inspectors of election, an election or primary election in this state or in a district, county, township, city, village in this state, shall not receive the vote of a person whose name is not registered in the registration book or listed on a computer voter registration precinct list of a township, ward, or precinct. Right? So there's two ways. You can be registered in a book or be in a computer voter registration. Right? So this is voter registration, but now we're going to talk about registration of electors. Well, apparently they're different. Right? Because that's what the registration book is for. Each person who has the following qualifications of an elector or who will have those qualifications at the next election or primary election is entitled to register as an elector in the township, city, or village in which he or she resides. That is what they will not let you do. The person shall be a citizen of the United States, not less than 18 years of age, a resident of the state, not less than 30 days, and a resident of the township, city, village on or before the 13th day before the next regular or special election or primary election. For purposes of registering to vote, now we're talking about registering to vote, no longer talking about registering as an elector, but for purposes of registering to vote and voting at an election or special election for an office of judge of a municipal court that exercises jurisdiction over another city pursuant to some section of the Revised Judicature Act, blah, 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 blah. A person who resides in another city over which the municipal court jurisdiction is exercised is considered to be a resident of the city in which the municipal court is located. We're not supposed to have any municipal courts in Michigan anymore, so I don't even know why that section is in there. Right? All municipal courts were disbanded and replaced with the district court. But this is the way the Esquires roll. Registration of persons. A person confined in jail who is otherwise a registered elector, qualified elector, prior to the trial or sentence may, upon request, register under Section 504. Right? So even people in jail can register as electors. It's not the same as voting. It's registering as an elector. Right? That's what, gives you a legal presence in the state. Registration cards. The term registration card is used in this chapter shall be construed as meaning either cards or loose leaf sheets, and either may be used in the discretion of the township, city, village clerk, as the case may be. The term file, as used in this chapter, shall be construed in meaning of either a file or loose leaf book. So this isn't a computer thing like it talked up here where it said they could have this, where did they talk about the computer thing? Right? Shall not receive votes of persons whose name is not registered in the registration book or listed on the computer voter registration precinct list. Okay, well, they're two different things. I want to be in the registration book. And they're supposed to have them. Right? Because they're supposed to be these registration cards. And they're supposed to be a registration affidavit. So the registration affidavit under 493, and 493 it says it's repealed. Well, how can that be? Repeal section pertaining to registration cards, which we're talking about here is registration cards. Right? So, hey, it's still there. I don't care what they did. They're supposed to be this card. It's got the name of the elector. It didn't say the name of the voter. The residence address of the elector. Now, this is the thing. Nobody really knows what their residence address is, because if you look at the form to fill out to get a state ID, where it says residence address, it says street name and number. Well, does that mean I put 14 Mile Road 10955? Is that what I'm supposed to do? Or is there some other number, like a lot number or something else that's supposed to be on there? I don't know what the residence address is. But I do know who knows. Consumers Energy. Because they're the ones who assume that position because they've never finished the paperwork that has to do with the electrical power going to the house. That meter sitting at your house is it's in the customer's drop, and it's Consumers Energy's power. So Consumers Energy is the customer for the power going into the house. They've claimed to be the resident. Anyways, residence address, birthplace, driver's license, state ID, statement of elector citizen of the United States, statement elector time of completing an affidavit. Well, it's an affidavit. What does an affidavit require? It requires somebody to take an oath, period. Okay, well, when you go register to vote, you don't have to take an oath. Right? Statement. All these things have to be done. Right? Statement that the elector has or will have established his or her residence in the township. They won't let us do this. Registration of electors, duty of the Secretary of State. It shall be the duty of the Secretary of State, that'd be one of the people you're suing, Sheriff, to make proper forms for use of registration of electors. It didn't say about voters. Where's the form for electors? Right? Just get that, Sheriff. Start there. Application for registration. A person who is not registered but possesses the qualification of elector as set forth in 492 may apply for registration to the clerk, county, township, supervisor, village, which he or she resides on the day other than Saturday, Sunday, legal holiday, yada, yada, yada. Registration accepted between the 13th. Okay, this has to do with can't have it too close to the date of the election. Except as otherwise provided, an application for registration shall not be executed at a place other than the office of county, township, city, village clerk, or public place or places designated by the clerk or deputy registrar for receiving registrations. Right? Application for registration. Where's it at? Registration shall not be placed in a precinct registration file until the date immediately following that election. I think that has to do with you get too close to the dates. Then we go on to voter registration. Right? So up until now had been elector registration, now separately voter registration. And go a little bit farther down, and we're back to registration of elector. Registration application, oaths, yada yada. An elector entitled to registration in an election precinct may become registered in the precinct by applying in person and signing the registration application before the clerk or assistant clerk of the city, township, village in which the precinct is located. For the purpose of this, for the performance of his or her duties under this act, each clerk or assistant clerk shall have the power to administer oaths and to swear persons as to the truth of statements contained in the application. Where the hell is the application, Sheriff? Right? 168, 499. Start there. This is why y'all come on down. We'll go to the Oakfield Township, Hall. Bring the sheriff of Kent County with you. Make sure you guys have your paperwork straightened out. And we'll go look through the records. We'll get it all straightened out. We'll have it all figured out in an afternoon. Then we go down to voter registration. Right? Again, this is after you're an elector. Now you can become a voter. This is why your vote really doesn't count. They let you go down and vote and play like you do. But, you don't have any say because you're not an elector. You're not really seen. This is why when you go to the county commissioners meeting, the only input you get to put in as the citizen is as the public, but not as a citizen, not as an elector. Right? The electors are the ones that make the decisions in the township, not the township board. It's supposed to be the electors. But we don't have any, so the township board's making all the decisions. And who's sitting at the end of the table? A fucking Esquire. Right? He's the same as a communist political officer, making sure that everybody's following the union rules. So this is where we are, Sheriff. Dar Leaf. Right? People like this are impersonating you. They're saying they are the chief law enforcement officer. So I'm sure that the prosecutor for Berry County believes the same thing. Right? Office responsibilities, chief law enforcement official in the county. Well, now he's the official. Here he said he's the officer. Which one is it? You can't be both, or can you? You can't be, because that's supposed to be constitutionally the powers of the sheriff. But because the sheriff office is vacated, right, then he's acting as the trustee. It's the same in the county, Sheriff. I live in Oakfield Township, but the ordinances are written for the township of Oakfield. And so technically, I live in Oakfield Township, Kent County, Michigan, United States. But there's this other jurisdiction called Township of Oakfield, County of Kent, State of Michigan, United States of America. Right? That's the Esquire jurisdiction. And we shouldn't be in that jurisdiction, but we've been deceived and put into that jurisdiction. It happened at birth, where instead of issuing us a birth certificate, they give everybody a certificate of live birth. And if you take that phrase, certificate of live birth, and you search it in the Vital Statistic Act of Michigan, you'll soon find out that, well, certificates of live birth, those are used for adoptions, stillbirths, and births out of wedlock. Well, they give them to everybody. And the one they give you has errors in it, so it really isn't even that. But, they don't give you a birth certificate. We've not been registered in Michigan, United States, so we're considered lost beyond the sea. But if we could register as electors into our proper residence, which is a township, city, village, right, the things that are the local government, well, then we would be seen. We wouldn't have to put up with this shit anymore ever again. And, you just have to live with that for a bit and think about it. It'll all come to you that, the Staff Sergeant Ratlewski is correct. So, just a few very interesting things in this law. Because the great thing about doing it as a PDF is you can put words like vacant and then start word searching and see where it comes up. And you'll see that, like for the governor, the office of governor or lieutenant governor shall become vacant upon the happening of any of the following events: death of the incumbent, his resignation, removal for cause, ceasing to be a resident of the state, conviction for an infamous crime, offense involving violation of his oath of office, the decision of a competent tribunal declaring his election void, or his neglect or refusal to take and subscribe the constitutional oath of office and deposit the same in a manner and within the time prescribed by law. Well, we're not talking anymore about the Constitution for Michigan because we've already shown that that's invalid. So the only one left is the one to satisfy the 6th article of the Constitution. In other words, 4 USC 101 or 1 Stat 23, the particular laws. And without doing that, well, then the person pretending to be the governor has avoided the constitutional oath. And avoiding a constitutional oath is a common law act of treason all by itself. And it's just not the governor, it's all these people pretending to be the government. So all the judges in Berry County, all the Esquires in Berry County, all the sheriffs in Berry County, the township supervisors, you all got the same problem. All right, there's a lot of ways to become vacant. And you know what they are? Not take your oath of office. All right, county officer, vacancy. Well, let's see. How could the office of sheriff be vacant? Drain commissioner, surveyor, coroner shall be vacant upon the happening of any of the following: death of the incumbent, resignation, removal of office, so forth and so on. Competent tribunal. His refusal or neglect to take and subscribe to the constitutional oath of office and deposit the same in a manner within the time prescribed by law. His refusal or neglect to give a bond in the amount and manner prescribed by law. You got two things to do, judge or sheriff. You got to take the oath in 4 USC 101, and you need to file a bond. And so do all the other county officers. And then you're our state government local. And we don't need the rest of this shit. Right? Because I'm self-governing. I just need to know where to take my complaints to. And it isn't the system we have now with these people impersonating as officers of the United States or the several states, as judges, as attorneys. Even an attorney has taken oath of office. They're a court officer, and they got to take an oath. And they're not doing it. So, I mean, there's all sorts of things in here to point out that. But the biggest one to start with is get everybody properly registered, and understand that if any of these officers listed in this election code haven't taken the oath in 4 USC 101, that would include school boards, by the way, well, they don't have any authority. So don't let them do anything. Make them stop. They're disturbing the peace. Right? They argue with it, well, put them in jail. You know what to do with people who argue. They disturb the peace. Put them in jail. Okay, very good. Somebody please help me get this to Sheriff Dar Leaf. I keep calling Sheriff Dar, but it's actually Dar Leaf. Sorry, Sheriff Leaf. Right? And we'll go from there. It isn't this man here. Let's go find the sheriff. Right? Berry County, Michigan. Sheriff. All right, that's Sheriff Dar Leaf. Mission statement. The mission of the Berry County Sheriff's Office is to provide a full spectrum of professional correction and law enforcement services to ensure our community continues to progress as a safe and secure place to live, work, and visit. Well, as long as Esquires are running loose, Sheriff, that ain't going to happen. And, you could do something about it. You stand there in front of the Constitution. You want to be a constitutional officer under that Constitution, then you need to comply with the 6th article of the Constitution. And the oath has been written. It's very simple, and it says what you need to do. And you can get her done. And then you can call on the Army to come in and clean the mess up. All right, because you got a gold fringe flag. Well, that's what's happening. Okay. Sheriff, if you got any questions, please give me a call. Just one last time, right? So you know who I am. All right, Staff Sergeant Robert Allen Rutluski, U.S. Army veteran. Try and do the right thing, Sheriff. Email is courtofrecord@aol.com, and my phone number is 616-712-6179. Hope to hear from you soon. Have a good day.